don't shut up, I'm gonna kick 100% of your ass.
Look, it is Spicoli. Put those shirts back on. Did you miss that sign? No shirt. No shoes. No service. That is the rule here. Do you recall when a film about pizza and mall jobs launched major, legendary careers? In 1982, Universal Pictures introduced us to the world of Ridgemont High. What seemed like a simple summer comedy became a time capsule of an entire generation. It featured a fresh cast including Sean Penn, Judge Reinhold, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Forrest Whitaker appeared alongside a young Nicolas Cage. They were just kids at the mall. They were the elite class of '82, hiding strange secrets behind their checkered vans. Today, we are exploring 15 strange facts about our favorite classic high school film. Stick around for number 1. Involving a daring piece of undercover investigative journalism. It involves a real school and a moment that made everything feel dangerously authentic. Before we begin, please subscribe so you do not end up flipping burgers in costume. Share your favorite movie memories in the comments. Let us head back to class. We start with 15, the class of '82. That kid eventually won 2 Oscars. No one expected that. This was supposed to be about teenage hormones and pizza. Yet, it became a starting point for 3 future Academy Award-winning icons. Sean Penn became Jeff Spicoli, making a beach bum the most famous voice of the decade. Forgive my tardiness. This new daily routine is just completely and totally overwhelming. He later won 2 Oscars, but in '82, he was just a kid in sneakers. Forrest Whitaker was Charles Jefferson, the powerhouse who crushed an entire football team single-handedly. He was furious. That intensity was there long before he won a Best Actor trophy. Then we have Nicolas Cage, appearing as an unnamed friend in the background. He actually tried out for the lead but did not get the part. That early rejection feels poetic considering the legendary career he would eventually build. It was a difficult early memory. This was no prestige film, yet he found glory. This was not a festival darling. It was a teen movie set in a food court. Most teen flicks create catchphrases. This one created legends. Next, the burger joint star, before he was a pilot. Tom Cruise wanted to be the lead in this movie. You are fired. I am truly sorry about this situation. He was just a teenager, showing an intense drive that was almost frightening. That energy was for blockbusters, not for selling fish sandwiches with a straight face. That was the main issue. The creators felt his focus did not match the clumsy energy the character really needed. Cruise was too perfect. Brad needed to be a loser. He was already a success, so he moved on to become a global legend. Judge Reinhold arrived, bringing the perfect energy of an ordinary '82 guy. He made that embarrassing costume breakdown feel real. We loved him because we were him. Cruise would have been scary. One choice changed 2 different paths in movie history. 13 covers an audition that never happened for a character that never left. When Sean Penn met the director for the film, he did not use a script. There were no rehearsed lines or nervous speeches about connecting with the role. He simply understood the character. Without some freedom, life just feels fake and wrong. He walked in looking like he had just left the sandy shores. His presence was so perfect that the director knew he was the one. He was Spicoli. The search was over. He became a legend and never looked back. Penn vanished into his role before the cameras even rolled. Questioning his teacher about being late with a vacant stare, he reportedly forced everyone to address him only as Jeff. Even during lunch breaks on the studio sidewalk, if you spoke his real name, he simply would not answer you. Yet, shout for that legendary surfer, and he would offer a hang 10 sign in that iconic haze grin. Colleagues wondered if this was pure method brilliance or just too many afternoons chasing waves under the sun. It was likely both. making his transition into cinema's most serious dramatic powerhouse even more delightful to recall. Even now, that blonde stoner remains his most beloved ghost, asking what happened to the good times. It was an invitation to stop worrying about the clock and just enjoy the ride together. Those sun-drenched quips have survived longer than any of his heavy, award-winning performances. He stayed in character for 40 years, and we still won't let him leave. Number 12. The Zeppelin snub. You might think a teenage reporter who lived the rock and roll dream would have some backstage influence. Traveling on that tour bus did not mean he could just call in a soundtrack favor later on. By 1982, Cameron Crowe was already a respected writer with deep roots in the music scene. He held a vault of stories and old passes, symbols of his time spent among legends. Naturally, he envisioned those massive guitar anthems fueling his high school masterpiece. He wanted that heavy, windows-down sound to define the feeling of driving through the San Fernando Valley. It felt like a perfect match. But the band kept their masterpieces under lock and key. No amount of begging could sway their manager, who protected those records like ancient treasure. Old friendships meant nothing when it came to the music. The studio doors stayed firmly shut. He chose other songs, though we still wonder how a stadium riff would have sounded over that asphalt. It is a lost piece of cinema history that stayed just out of our reach. You can tour the world with rock gods, but legal documents do not care about your cool stories. Even the wildest legends eventually have to face the lawyers. Number 11. The Canvas Revolution. Penn personally curated the look that defined a generation of laid-back California dreamers. Just breathe. He picked out those checkerboard shoes himself, turning a simple canvas slip-on into a cultural phenomenon. Back then, that specific footwear belonged strictly to the local kids on skateboards, unless you were hanging out at the beach. You probably never even saw a pair. They were an underground secret until every teenager in America saw them on the big screen. Here's a little taste of how that changed everything. A single actor's wardrobe choice gave that brand more fame than any marketing team ever could. There was no fancy contract or corporate meeting. It was just a kid and his favorite shoes. He gave them a feature-length advertisement without ever asking for a single cent in return. Decades later, those patterns still fill every mall. A permanent reminder of a 1980s summer. It was a small detail that became the official uniform for kids across the country. That choice echoed through time. Number 10. The Cathedral of the Valley. The director refused to use a stage, insisting on the pulse of the real Sherman Oaks. They captured the neon glow and food court energy while the world kept shopping around them. Real people wandered past the cameras, unaware they were becoming part of a cinematic time capsule. While the burger shop was a clever recreation, the surrounding atmosphere was as authentic as it gets. The spirit of the era is preserved in those wide shots of the bustling corridors. The blend of reality and fiction was so seamless that we all believed we were there. That genuine feeling comes from the fact that the film's heart was a living, breathing place. Suddenly, every teen movie tried to bottle that feeling of fluorescent freedom and hanging out. It became a monument to our youth before the world eventually changed it forever. Those neon halls of the Galleria have faded, and a sugary orange Julius likely costs $9 today. Yet for 90 minutes, that mall lives on, as do the kids who saw it as everything. Number 9. The greatest musical betrayal of 1982. One specific moment in Fast Times remains etched in the minds of anyone who ever caught it. We remember that summer fantasy by the water, where time slowed and a young man's heart raced. That pulsing rhythm from the cars provided the soul for the scene, becoming an inseparable cinematic memory. Those first few chords trigger an instant mental replay, standing as an iconic sound in movie history. It defined 80s film, but fans who hurried to buy the record found a massive, empty void. It was missing from every groove of the vinyl, lost to the complicated world of legal contracts. That essential track was excluded from the 1982 album. Despite being the one song people wanted, it was the movie's heart. Yet owning it required buying a different record from 1978. That debut album was a masterpiece. But the principle of the omission felt like a personal insult. The film's defining anthem failed to appear on its own record. You had one job. Elektra Records. Total failure. Number 8. A legend that smells of fresh pepperoni. That classroom lunch delivery became the most repeated joke in the history of 1980s high school cinema. A surfer dares to have dinner delivered during a history lesson. Walking in, like it was normal, he asked for the works without regret. A move of pure defiance that felt incredibly bold. This was not just fiction. Long before apps existed, students were testing their instructors' patience. They imitated that very prank. Fueled by the reckless bravado of a kid who ignored the rules, they decided a lecture needed extra toppings, sparking a movement that the filmmakers never could have predicted. The film turned a gag into a national challenge, ensuring every campus had one brave, hungry rebel. They would feed quarters into payphones, directing drivers to specific classrooms instead of house numbers. For years, faculty acted like border patrol, seizing warm boxes in the halls like dangerous illicit goods. The delivery man returned, continuing the battle between students and the faculty. One cinematic moment inspired millions of teenagers to embrace the same chaotic, hilarious impulse at once. Most of us were far too scared of getting caught to even whisper in our own classrooms. To the bold souls who actually followed through, you became suburban legends. We have reached the midpoint of our journey. So, let us take a very brief pause. Did you spend your weekends at the food court or try to act cool while reciting lines? Share your story below if you remember those days. And tell us which character you were then. Maybe you were the strict teacher. Let us return to the lot for the disaster at number 7. In those days, a shiny Chevrolet Camaro Z28 was the ultimate status symbol. The elite chariot, with its engine growling, that car announced your arrival, proving you had finally reached the top. Damaging such a machine was a death sentence. Yet, our favorite surfer turned a joyride into destruction. Seeing only the twisted metal and hearing the frantic excuses made the tragedy feel even more vivid. If you spent your youth nursing a rusty clunker, watching that luxury car die felt like horror. It was a visceral loss. But the subsequent attempt to hide the truth was peak adolescent desperation. He attempted to blame a rival school with zero evidence, relying purely on hope and a dream. Remarkably, the lie worked, igniting a fiery desire for vengeance against the perceived enemies of the school. That anger fueled a legendary performance on the turf. As if the car's spirit drove every play, he dominated the game in a strange twist of fate, proving that chaos leads to unlikely victories. It remains a classic moment of irony. Every kid who loved their wheels felt the pain. You cringed while breathing a relief. Number 6 explores the math of teenage love. For any anxious teenager trying to survive the big dance, following dating rules felt like a mission. In the real-life journals that inspired this story, those famous guidelines for love were even more intense. It started as a simple 3-part strategy. Screenwriters realized 3 rules couldn't hold Damone's ego. 5 points added. More comedy and teenage delusion. Robert Romanus played it like a Harvard lecture. Hide your feelings and play the rock records. He made 90 seconds of advice sound scientific. We believed he cracked the entire romantic code. Most kids tried leaning coolly against a wall. We pretended to be alone while plans failed. Scalpers rarely offer the best paths to maturity. In 1982, he gave us priceless hope. I will share that 5-point plan now. It was all about unearned, misguided teenage confidence. 40 years later, fans still treat it as science. Amy Heckerling truly didn't care what others thought. Her debut turned high school into a masterpiece. A 27-year-old captured our suburban mess. She took unknowns and mall food into history. Her unique tone made the studio bosses nervous. Others would have just chased cheap, raunchy laughs. She chose to make us feel something real. You ache for them because we lived it. Nailing 2 decades of youth showed her instincts. Her ability to speak to teenagers is legendary. She found something deep inside a rowdy comedy. Her debut became a blueprint for every movie. One small moment in 1982 mattered. Brad looked miserable in that fast food uniform. Nancy Wilson from Heart laughed at his pain. She was a rock goddess of the 70s. Love brought her into that famous movie scene. In 1982, anyone could become iconic. Their marriage led to years of creative magic. She later scored some of cinema's best music. That laughing driver helped tell our rock stories. A tiny cameo led to a massive legacy. Mr. Hand was the ultimate enemy of fun. He was a real person, not a cartoon. That stern teacher was based on a legend. He was obsessed with the value of time. Every distraction felt like a theft from him. Ray Walston brought a quiet, terrifying authority here. He knew that true power never needs shouting. His silent stare made every student sit straight. He understood that disappointment is the loudest sound. He spoke with the quiet precision of a clerk, documenting your destiny. Yet we loved him because he lacked true malice. His only wish was for us to grasp American heritage and finally leave that messy hippie era behind in the school corridors. But at 16, watching him shred those precious show passes felt like witnessing a high-level criminal act against our youth. You are ruining my identification. Look, friend, what exactly is the issue here? Hindsight suggests he was the lone visionary in those halls. But back then, he was just the authority we loved to challenge. He was the anchor, proving that beyond the golden California sun, the heavy clock of adulthood was already ticking for us all. Rank 2, a $5 million risk. Universal's strategy for Fast Times at Ridgemont High felt remarkably straightforward at the time. Entrust $5 million to a rookie filmmaker and hope for a forgettable youth flick with tiny risks and even smaller expectations. Just entertain the restless kids, collect the gate money, and move on. Searching for some classic hard rock records. No heavy rock here. I conquered those exams while you were nowhere to be found. They expected zero accolades or legacy-only cheap thrills, teenage sorrow, and tubs of buttered snacks sold in the dark. The fans did not get the memo. Earning over $27 million at home and shattering every low financial bar set. Youth crowds swarmed the theaters, finding every way inside to witness the magic over and over with their entire social circle. A restricted coming-of-age story without icons. Filmed on what the studios considered mere spare change. Crushed giants that spent 10 times more on ads. I simply dropped by to assist you with those complex numbers today. Seemed right for a summer afternoon. Yet, executives feared that adult rating would be their cinematic death sentence. They doubted kids would buy in. Meanwhile, our generation was busy inventing clever ways to bypass the ticket booth with confused staff and kind elder brothers. We mastered the art of the perfect entrance into that forbidden theater. That tiny wager exploded into a goldmine, forever altering how Hollywood captures the essence of being young. Tinseltown learned that respecting the messy reality of youth, the failure and the shame would inspire us to open our wallets. The studio secured their fortune while we gained a timeless memory. A bargain that feels absolutely right in retrospect. Rank 1. The secret student whose double life birthed the legendary Spicoli. While typical authors study through pages, Cameron Crowe chose to actually walk the halls as an undercover student. He was not some visiting scholar peering through a lens. He became one of us. Right down to the locker. Back in 1979, this 22-year-old persuaded a San Diego principal to let him infiltrate the senior class. Living as Dave Cameron for 12 months, he endured every lecture and questionable lunch to capture our world's true spirit. This was no cheap stunt. Having toured with rock legends at 16, Crowe already knew how to find the real story, a Rolling Stone veteran by his teens. he realized the truly epic dramas were not on stage, but in the lockers. He recorded every whispered rumor and the legend of the boy who summoned a delivery man right to his desk. His journals mirrored the intensity of a frontline reporter, capturing the skirmishes of life during the final school bell. This is why Fast Times at Ridgemont High feels authentic, avoiding the hollow imitation of typical grown-up writing. Those lines were not polished in a studio office. They were born from the echoes of genuine teenage voices in courtyards. Once his story hit the shelves, his classmates finally saw the truth about the mysterious boy in the back row. That silent peer who seemed a bit more mature had actually been archiving their lives the entire time. The beach-bound rebel who defined a cinematic archetype was actually a composite of the real souls Crowe met. Why squander my precious hour so boldly, he just shrugged. Lost in his own quiet world, the tragic hero of every fast food nightmare, Brad Hamilton, was pulled directly from the ink of those secret journals. While most young men in 1979 worried about bills, Crowe was busy preserving our collective adolescence. He was crafting a legacy that would spawn icons and fundamentally transform the way movies tell our youthful stories. The result was a masterpiece that remains etched in our vocabulary over 40 years since it first debuted. It all started with a stranger introducing himself in a room, forever changing how we remember those golden years. Spanning from secret reports to legendary stars who began by disrupting lessons with a pepperoni pie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High stands as a cultural monument. If you loved this journey, please join our community. Stay tuned for more hidden truths from the films that shaped us. Never forget, even beneath the brightest California sun, the meter is always running on our youth. Until next time, keep those memories alive on Remember When.